Duval Rundown is brought to you by Injury Care Centers. Same-day injury care, no ER lines. Now here's your host, Gus Logue.
Sorry, let me add myself to the stage. Good morning. Welcome to episode 12. Whew, that game has me mixing up my words. Welcome to episode 12 of Duval Rundown. My name is Gus Logue. We're going to be joined by Ryan Hacker Green momentarily to break down the Jacksonville Jaguars' Week 4 loss to the Houston Texans. Let's bring on Hacker. Feel free to comment in the comment section in the specific stream comments for YouTube, Facebook, X/Twitter. Hacker, welcome. Good to see you. You're just shaking your head at me.
Yeah, Gus, great to see you too, man.
Appreciate that. Yeah, it's we got to start off with some small talk because I'm afraid this show is going to become redundant with all the losing that the Jaguars are doing. And credit to them, I guess they find different ways to lose. This time they were able to hold on to the fourth quarter, but just were held scoreless in the fourth quarter and ended up eventually letting up a game-winning drive to C.J. Stroud and the Texans. And so I felt like the Jaguars kind of had this game, or at least they were in position to win this game for the majority of it. It felt like it was 20-17, or at least the Jaguars were up by one score for the majority of it, at least the majority of the second half. And so were you feeling good halfway through the game, Hacker, or were you kind of like, oh, it's just a matter of time until the whole thing collapses?
In Miami, the game ended when Travis Etienne fumbled. The game ended here when Doug Peterson went for it on 4th and goal and ran a quarterback draw, which everybody broadcasting the game, my Boston Terrier, anybody watching knew they were going to do that with 5 wide receivers. I don't say this lightly. I really don't. I think I might be done with Doug. And it's not that he's necessarily a bad coach. He obviously isn't a bad coach. He's got a ring. I mean, he's got a Super Bowl. He's a world champion. I was so off-put by that decision, which at this point it's stubbornness, okay? Stubbornness or incompetence, and I don't believe he's incompetent because he's got a ring on his finger. You are the worst short yardage team in the NFL. The absolute worst. There is nobody worse than you at short yardage. And you go for it inexplicably on 4th and goal at the 1. I tweeted out moments before that. I said, I would almost bet my life they can't gain a yard. And sure enough, they didn't. And look, I mean, the offense was putrid in the fourth quarter, but the momentum of this football game completely changed by not taking those points. And people will say, well, the Texans still scored and would have won 24-23. You don't know that. A 6-point lead compared to a 3-point lead, the dynamics of the game could be different. I'm assuming everything would not have been identical if the Jaguars were up 6 as opposed to being up 3. I think I might be done with Doug. And again, I don't say that lightly.
Yeah, and I think even more so than the fourth down decision, I mean, whoever the commentator was literally called it that the fact that Trevor was going to keep it for a quarterback draw. And so it was pretty easy to see. But even before that, for the first 2 plays that they had within the 5-yard line, within the 3-yard line was 2 Tank Bigsby runs, which is inexcusable in my eyes, considering he just ran 50 yards down the sideline to set them up in that position. I feel like it's pretty obvious that you should sub out that guy because he needs a breather. So it's one thing to not sub him out, but it's another to give him the ball 2 more times in a row. It's crazy. And then, I don't know, there was a 3rd down incompletion to Gabe Davis in the corner of the end zone. That was a little bit too close, but not close enough. And then, Lawrence is trying to get stuffed.
Nothing ever changes, man. We're here talking about the same stuff every week. They're terrible on short yardage. When the offense has to get a first down, the offense doesn't get a first down. I don't blame the defense. I mean, you're out there without a Luakin and Lloyd. By the way, I'm not sure if Lloyd gets his job back with the way Ventrell Miller played. Ventrell Miller was spectacular today. But you're without Campbell and Savage, and I'm happy Shad paid all that money for those guys. They've really made a contribution so far here in the first 4 games of the year. Nothing ever changes. It's Groundhog Day. I said this last week. To lump the Gators and the Seminoles in, we are in football hell. They're 3-10 combined. The Gators, Seminoles, and Jaguars. It is horrific here in North Florida. maybe it'll change when the month of October flips, but you're 0-4 now. You're essentially down 3.5 games to the Texans in the division. I don't even know how to be positive. I don't know how to be optimistic about this. It is a dumpster fire. I was wrong about this team. They're bad.
Yeah, the one thing that I always held optimism around was the quarterback, because I thought even if they're going to continue not surrounding him with the best pieces or the best system or whatever, I still have a lot of faith in Trevor Lawrence. But that has really started to dwindle for me. I think so far this season, obviously it's not a very good season and the worst he's played since his rookie year under Urban Meyer. But today was the first day where I was like, wow, there might be really a problem. And someone asked earlier when you're talking about Doug and saying you're out on Doug after this game, would you say you're out on Trevor too, or how would you feel about the $275 million quarterback?
You can't be out on Trevor. You can't be. He's $275 million. He's here. Doesn't matter if you're out on him or whatever, sideways and whatever. He's here. I'm old enough to remember being laughed at when I made the suggestion at a point last year that C.J. Stroud may be a better quarterback than Trevor Lawrence. Oh, Hacker, you're too negative. Trevor's the man. C.J. Stroud. Oh, are you kidding me? It's not even close.
Mm-mm.
It's not even close. And you know what? If you want to sleep better at night by saying, well, he's got better skill position guys, and he has this. C.J. Stroud's offense committed 1 billion penalties today. His offensive line sucks. They are awful. And it didn't matter because he overcame it all. How about Trevor has 13 penalties to overcome? How do you think that would work? It's not even close, Gus, how much better C.J. Stroud is right now than Trevor Lawrence. So for all those people that had a lot to say last year, where are you now? Because you, in a heartbeat, would take C.J. Stroud over Trevor Lawrence.
For sure. I remember when C.J. Stroud and the Texans upset the Jaguars last week, and I think it was week 3 of the season, one of their first games.
Yeah, when the 160-pound fullback returned a kickoff for a touchdown. That was a good one.
That's the very one. I thought the performance I saw from C.J. Stroud was one of the best performances I've ever seen by an athlete, because I was just so impressed by how calm he looked in the pocket. I know commentators today on the broadcast were talking about how his nickname is Cool Breeze, but for him to look that comfortable in just his third career NFL game at that point, and now he still looks comfortable, even though I don't really think Bobby Sloak did him a lot of favors. Nico Collins obviously went off, but they didn't have Tank Dell or Joe Mixon for this game. And so you're right. It's not like he's playing with the best of circumstances either, but he was able to get it done. He didn't have a super sloppy game, but it wasn't super clean either. But he was able to avoid the pass rush and then be the last team to score. And Trevor wasn't. Obviously, there was the really bad overthrow to Brian Thomas Jr. that probably should have, could have been a touchdown. And then there's a few other bad plays. I don't think anyone should fault the failed 4th down where he ran it on him, but it certainly wasn't the best game from Lawrence. And he didn't have that franchise quarterback just performance that you would hope from him, being on the road in a basically must-win game when you're in the 4th quarter with a chance to go win the game, and we didn't see it. And so still maybe there's problems with the rest of the system and the rest of the environment, but at this point, it's just getting so old, and he's still just 25 years old, but it is his 4th year in the league. And so we got to be able to see him really start elevating the team way more than he has at this point. Because even if the Jaguars would have won this game, it would not have been because of Trevor Lawrence. And so he really needs to, I mentioned C.J. Stroud, how I was so impressed by how in rhythm and how cool and how breezy he's been since he was a rookie. And I feel like that's the biggest thing missing from Trevor's game right now. It's we've seen him make every throw possible. And so we know that there's something special in there, but he's just feels like a 3-point shooter that's lost his rhythm right now. And he really needs to just get his swagger back and really get in a rhythm in order to be the quarterback that I think myself and a lot of other people think he can be. But right now he's just not in that rhythm.
Well, I mean, here's the bottom line. All right, the Christian Kirk bomb, you get paid $55 million a year. And I'm sorry if that comes with a lot of pressure. And I'm sorry if that comes with a lot of expectations. But when you sign a contract that gives you $55 million per year, and you have a wide receiver wide flipping open for a touchdown, it is your responsibility to let him get that football. And Trevor did not do that today. And he's going to stand at that podium in the next 15 minutes, and he's going to say, we're just not very good right now. We got to look at the tape. No, I don't care about any of that. Just words. All right, just words. I don't know if I'm going to play any of those sound bites on Hacker After Dark today. I don't care what Doug Peterson says this week. I really don't even care what Trevor says this week. I'm tired of the words. He's lost 9 games in a row as an NFL starting quarterback, Gus. 9 games in a row. Good quarterbacks, hell, average quarterbacks do not lose 9 consecutive starts. You know who loses 9 starts in a row? Bryce Young, and he gets thrown to the bench. But Bryce Young hasn't signed a $275 million contract. So they can throw him to the bench right now. I mean, Daniel Jones and Trevor Lawrence, aren't they kind of the same guy? I mean, people got mad when talking about comparing Daniel Jones's numbers to Trevor Lawrence's numbers. Look at the stats. Look at the wins and the losses in the last year and a half. I get that we want Trevor to succeed and we think Trevor's great. The guy's lost 9 starts in a row. Are they all his fault? No. But at the end of the day, the quarterback's going to get the credit and the blame. And there's plenty of blame to go around, but you cannot lose 9 starts in a row being one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL.
That's a fact. I wanted to go back and look at the opponents he faced because I do think he faced a pretty tough schedule of opposing defenses in that span. But, that's not an excuse. The excuses are over at this point, as people are saying in the comments, too. Kind of enough is enough at this point, I think.
Well, yeah, I'll tell you why. It started with Cincinnati, right? And then it was Cleveland. And then it was Baltimore. And then Tampa. My God, that Christmas Eve game last year was a disaster. And then it was Tennessee. And then this year, obviously, Miami and Cleveland and Buffalo and today Houston. But this is the NFL, man. This is not playing Wake Forest anymore. He's not playing, Duke. These defenses are good. And Trevor's had some good moments. But you cannot miss those throws. You can't. And when you combine that with you got a head coach and offensive coordinator that you get the ball back with 4 minutes to go. This is the second time this has happened in 4 games. The same exact thing happened against Miami. That's what I'm saying about these press conferences. They'll say, oh, we need to go look at the film and make our corrections. No, this is Groundhog Day. We were here 3 weeks ago. It was a tie game against Miami with 4 minutes to go. And what did you do? You went 3 and out, looked awful, gave Miami the ball. They go down and score in the game. Today, 4 minutes to go. You have a 3-point lead. Should have been 6. Doug Peterson was ridiculous going for it on 4th and goal. But it's a 3-point game. 4 minutes left. A 3 and out. The same thing that happened 21 days ago. You're not making corrections. You're not working the process. That's all bunk at this point. I don't even care what they say in the postgame.
Yeah, I was going to say for Trevor, it's alarming for this season because even for his losses at the end of last year, you could blame a little bit of that on injuries. And I know I'm going back to more excuses, but that excuse isn't relevant this year. He's fully healthy right now. And even though, I don't know. I don't think there's any injuries to the offense that I can think of. It's really all been to the defensive side for the most part. And so there's no injury excuse there. And even for the team, I know that they're missing some big pieces on defense, but that's not an excuse to not finish this game. They haven't been able to just finish a game in who knows how long, in a full calendar year. And so I feel like that's the big thing is that even though, there's the Trevor missed Brian Thomas Jr., and there's going to be a handful of bad plays throughout the course of the game. You got to find a way to rally the troops and just finish it out. And we haven't seen anything. This is the closest thing we've seen to that in a really long time, but they still weren't able to get it done. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next week because Joe Flacco is coming to town with Anthony Richardson hurt today. And so I almost think it's kind of worse for the Jaguars that they're facing Joe Flacco, who's just a veteran QB who's going to be able to take what the defense is giving him. And so it's going to be a real test for the Jaguars next week when they're doing their Ring of Honor celebration, whatever, for Tom Coughlin at halftime against the Colts at Everbank Field. We'll see if the stands are still full by halftime or not.
Well, that's the shame of this is they're the worst team in football right now. It's either them or Tennessee. we'll see Tennessee tomorrow. Tennessee's probably going to win because Miami's playing a quarterback that's been there like 2 weeks. I don't even know. Did Cincinnati hold on and win? I know they were winning late in the fourth.
Yeah, I know that too, but I don't know what the final is.
I mean, there's a chance that if Tennessee wins tomorrow, the Jaguars will be the last winless team in football. I mean, I just, normally, like, I've never been the guy that's sunshine and rainbows and the Jags are going to go 14-3 and be the number 1 seed. I didn't think that. I realistically thought, though, this was going to be another 9-8 type team, maybe 10-7. I have never been more wrong about a football team. I mean, I sat out there. You were out there with me. We're out there like for a month at training camp in 100-degree weather, watching these guys every single day. And I'm like, all right, yeah, they got some stuff. You're going to 8, 9, maybe 10 wins. They're terrible, man. It's coaching. And by the way, I will give credit. The offensive line kept Trevor reasonably clean today. We crushed the offensive line last week. Danielle Hunter didn't do very much. Will Anderson didn't do very much. But again, in the fourth quarter, with 4 minutes to go, after inexplicably wasting they just wasted Tank Bigsby's 58-yard run. Just wasted it. Again, I'm so off-put by that. And I'm trying to get over that before the fifth quarter because I can actually say some stuff on here. I'm not going to. I can't say that stuff on 1010XL. Of course, the 7 cardinal sins of sports talk radio, the words. But I'm trying to pace myself. So you waste Tank Bigsby's run. By the way, you said it. Everybody's going to talk about the quarterback draw. The first and second down runs, they ran the same play. They ran the same play into 1,000 pounds of Texan defensive linemen. Holy crap, that was a bad series. That was almost as bad as the 4-minute drill. Oh, my God, man. But you waste Bigsby's run. Okay. 4 minutes to go. You're up 3. First down or 2, the game is over. And that's what you do for the second time in 4 weeks. You take 46 seconds off the clock. You gain 3 feet. And you have to punt. Man, again, I don't like calling for people's jobs. But Doug Peterson and Press Taylor, I'm about done.
Yeah, they really did Trevor no favors in the fourth quarter. I mean, I know he kind of had a miss to Gabe Davis when there was a coverage player. I think it was Petre who defended the pass, but the ball came out of Trevor's hands weird. So that was not a great throw when he was trying to hit Gabe Davis, who was kind of sliding for a catch on the sideline. But they started out with a first down run to start every drive, and it went nowhere. As you said, I don't even know if the first down runs got 3 feet. And so they were always in second and long and third and long situations. And so they really did no favors to themselves to try to actually move the chains and burn more clock. They were so worried about burning the clock by getting a run play to get the game started or to get the drive started. They should have done what they did when they got the game started and done a wide receiver screen out to Christian Kirk. I thought that was a really good play call to kind of get Trevor a short throw to get him into rhythm and then just to get some easy yards. And they haven't been running receiver screens or those RPO bubbles nearly as much as they did last year. And I don't think they necessarily have to go back to doing it as much as they did, but it's nice to see that kind of stuff used to just make things easier for the offense rather than just running it up the gut and getting into those second and long and third and long situations.
Well, and one of the things, too, and I'm sure you saw the report before the game even kicked off, Jonathan Jones of CBS Sports comes out with that report this morning about how his sources inside the building, inside the organization, are talking about the possible rift between Trent Baalke and Doug Peterson. We've heard rumors about that for a while. I mean, you're going to start seeing it, hit the fan here, I think. At 0-4, the season's over, right? I mean, you're not going to come back from 0-4. Again, the Texans are basically up 3.5 games on you right now. To say the season's over with 13 games left is just ridiculous, but it might be. But you guys, now these reports coming out, and the problem with that report, with a loss like this, the loss is crushing. But then when you sit back and think about that report, it means people in that building are talking about the dysfunction going on down there between the general manager and the head coach. You know what that tells me, Gus? When people are talking to national members of the media and they're putting these stories out there 2 hours before kickoff, this tells me they know changes are coming, and this is CYA stuff. This is save your own skin time for everybody in the game, whether it's the GM or the head coach or the coordinators or whomever. And this thing could, if it's not already spiraling, which it very well may be at 0-4, it will start spiraling, in my opinion, pretty quick now.
Yeah, I can't imagine that it won't. I was thinking earlier when we were talking, I wonder if we're supposed to give any credit at all to the Jaguars for the way they started this game. I think most people in the country would have expected the Jaguars to just come out flat and just kind of continue the way that they were playing against the Bills last Monday night on Monday Night Football when they got trampled 47-10. And so I feel like it's a good thing that they at least came out and had a competitive game all the way to the end, and they weren't just like dead in the water immediately. But at the same time, it's hard to give them credit for that, the way that they finished the game, and then especially leaving them now in 0-4 territory, which the only team in NFL history that's ever made the playoffs after starting a season 0-4 is the 1992, I believe, San Diego Chargers. And so it's pretty much done at this point. I'm still maintaining my take that I don't think we'll see anyone get fired until the team returns from London, but I certainly would not be surprised if changes are made at some point in the next 24 hours.
Well, and that's the thing, too, and I agree with you, because you have Coughlin going into the Ring of Honor, or the Pride, right? So this week is not the week to do it, because it would take away from Tom.
Right.
And then you're going to London for 2 games. Now, the next 3 games they play, they hypothetically could win them all. I agree with you. Joe Flacco might carve this team up. I wish Anthony Richardson was playing. Joe Flacco put a 30-burger on him last year in Cleveland. Richardson left the game today in Indy. Flacco's probably going to be the guy next week. And then you play Chicago and New England. They're obviously not very good, but if you're going to make a change, it's a horrible time to do it because, again, Tom Pride in the Pride, London, you can't do it right now. So you just kind of go along with 3 weeks. And at that point, 7 games in, do you wait till the bye? I mean, I don't know. This is all we're going to be talking about. There's no more X's and O's talk. I mean, I might start thinking about the Colts on Thursday or Friday. It is all about just this dumpster fire. I do agree they played hard, but Gus, this is the NFL, man. These guys get paid checks every Tuesday. They get paid to play hard. You know what else they get paid to do? Win games, which is not what they've done 9 out of the last 10 times. You know, I'll commend high school teams for playing hard. You know, if Charleston Southern takes Alabama to a close game in the 4th quarter, Charleston Southern played hard. These are paid professionals. To heck with playing hard. You need to win. And the Jaguars haven't done that 90% of the time in the last 10 outcomes. And by the way, it's become a tradition now. I'm bringing it back. This is not all on Shad Khan, but I'm just pointing it out. Since the beginning of the 2012 season when Shad bought the team, the Jacksonville Jaguars have played 199 regular season games. They're 60-139 in that time frame. 60-139 in the last 199 games they've played.
Yeah, that's about all you really need to know. It'll be interesting. I think I said this in the past week where it feels like the Urban Meyer season where it's a matter of when, not if, there's changes that are going to be made. So it'll be just an interesting ride in the next month to see when that does end up happening, or even if we're going to need to wait until after the season. But I feel like the longer that the season goes on and no one is fired, I almost feel like that's a better chance that Balky ends up getting let go, just because I feel like if Balky was going to be safe, then they could just cut ties with Doug and Press, like pretty much right when they get back from London. But if they're going to wait until the season's completely over to make any kind of changes, then I almost wonder if that means that cleaning house would be on the way.
Yeah, I think all that's on the table now. And again, I don't think Doug's a terrible football coach. What he's doing here is not working. And the 4th quarter, again, just like the second half in Miami, was a disaster on offense. An absolute disaster. Now, there were some bright spots. Brian Thomas Jr. is a stud. Christian Kirk looked good. I mean, there were some bright spots, but we're past bright spots at this point at 0-4. I'll tell you this, too. I was out with a buddy watching college football yesterday. All the talk was about these Belichick rumors, which will certainly start heating up. I mean, if I were to tell you Belichick with McDaniels as the OC and Vrabel as the DC, would you take that right now?
Yeah, I think so. There would definitely be a question mark of like, oh, who's Belichick going to hire as the executive vice president of football operations or general manager or whatever, because it's likely that if Belichick gets a head coaching job, he's also going to want to be the de facto general manager and make all decisions as it relates to football operations. And so I know people are kind of worried about that, but at the same time, like, shouldn't you all just be worried about who's going to fill that seat regardless, whether it's Belichick or not? Like, I don't think that Belichick making that decision of who's going to fill that seat, like, I don't think he's necessarily going to make a worse decision than like whoever else would be making that decision would, if that makes sense. And so Belichick, like, I understand also that Shad is probably going to want to go away from what he's done in the past, which is hiring past winners to bring success to Jacksonville, and just hasn't worked out, whether it's Tom Coughlin or Urban Meyer or now Doug Peterson. And so I get the theory that he's going to want to go away from past success and instead try to find like the next Sean Payton, Drew Brees matchup, as Hayes Carline said on the show on Tuesday, or just like the next, I don't know, Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota, and get like that young hotshot kind of guy. But to me, like, Bill is just like a different guy compared to the rest of, like, whether it's Urban or Peterson or Coughlin or anyone else who's had past football success. Like, Bill Belichick is the greatest football coach, and maybe coach in any sport, of my generation, in our generation. And so, like, I think that if he is interested in taking the job, give it to him. Because if it's like anyone else who has like one or two previous Super Bowls, then it's like, okay, that doesn't seem as impressive anymore because of what Peterson especially has done recently. But like, Bill Belichick is different in my eyes. And so I would not be complaining if he ended up coming here to Jacksonville.
And I hate that we're here. I mean, I hate that we're here, but this is reality, man. I mean, this is the most underachieving, disappointing team in the NFL right now. I don't think there's any question about that. And that, you know, could they be 3-1? Yeah. Should they be at least 2-2? Yeah. Should they absolutely be at least 1-3? Yeah. But you know what? At the end of the day, bad football teams find ways to lose games. And the Jacksonville Jaguars have found a way to lose Miami, Cleveland, and today in Houston. And as you know, I'm not the only one. As the saying goes, when people show you who they are, believe them. Well, when NFL teams show you who they are, believe them. And the Jacksonville Jaguars have shown us that they are a bad football team that does not know how to close out games in the fourth quarter. That is reality. They're 0-4, and I get to go on the fifth quarter with Dave Campo and Leon Searcy coming up here beginning at 6 o'clock. And, boy, I need to calm down a little bit, or else that could be a riveting post-game show.
Yeah, well, at least we might have Travis Hunter to look forward to, right?
Travis Hunter, yeah. Number 1 pick in the draft. I'm not even going to say it. Won't even say it.
All right, Hacker. I'll let you get
yeah, I won't mention any quarterbacks that might go number 1 either.
Okay, yeah. Save that. We still got a very long season ahead of us for Jaguars football. And so you can catch Hacker on the fifth quarter on 1010XL 92.5 FM. He'll be with Coach Campo, Leon Searcy, breaking down more of Jaguars versus Texans. And he'll be joining us for the rest of the miserable Sundays to continue here this year. Hacker, have a good show. Thanks for coming.
Gus, happy 0-4, man. Glad to be with
you. Happy 0-4, Hack. Alrighty, you guys. I was thinking that we might have Tommy and Mia join this show. So far, they haven't shown up yet, and so we'll give them a few minutes to see what's what, and I'll just answer some questions that you guys might have. A lot of comments so far just saying we suck, which is fair. You can keep those coming too. I think someone asked earlier about the timeout strategy for the Jaguars at the end of the game. And so just to quickly explain that, like, you don't want the Texans to score with 5 seconds left, and then you don't have a chance to get the ball back like that all really with no time remaining. And so it makes sense for Doug Peterson to use his timeouts, even if the other team has the ball, if there's a minute or 2 minutes left, because it's more valuable for him to call timeout and keep it so that there's a minute or 2 minutes left rather than to pocket those timeouts and maybe just never even be able to use them at all. And so it's good for Doug to use those timeouts there. Let's see, what other questions do we have? Jeff said, just listen to Trevor. He said, we need to stay together. Don't need to blow it up. Could not be more wrong. They seriously need to blow up the dumpster. Yeah, I feel a little bit for Trevor. I mean, not just Trevor specifically, but really all of the players that have to talk to media It's one thing to talk like at your locker room in more of a chill setting in the middle of the week on a Wednesday or Thursday, but be 0-4 and keep losing in these various ways and have to go up and give answers that you don't really have an answer to. It must be pretty tough. And so I almost like wouldn't really take anything away from the press conferences, except for maybe like body language or just the way that people are answering questions, if that makes sense. But a lot of the wordy answers are going to be just words, and a lot of quotes like "we need to stay together" and "we got to go have fun out there" is something that Trevor was saying a lot in the last week or two. And so, yeah, feel bad, but what are they going to say? EPS, what's in Trevor's Gatorade? Certainly not Michael's magic stuff from Space Jam. I don't know. Yeah, when we were talking about Trevor earlier, I was going to add too, I still feel like it's a trust issue because, again, like we've seen Trevor make all the throws and all the plays that he missed today. And I also tweeted earlier, like, I feel like the big thing with Trevor is that his pocket management has been pretty brutal. He keeps doing that weird spin out move where if his first and second read aren't open, he'll just bail out of the pocket way too early. And he certainly knows it's way too early too. But I tweeted that the best trait that Lawrence had when he entered the league was his pocket presence. He was crazy good at just being able to sense incoming pressure and just reset his feet or move his feet just a little bit in the pocket, just like in a really just, I don't know, like nuanced way that was kind of hard to tell. He just made it look easy. And so now I think that there's a lack of trust in his teammates or his offensive scheme or something because he keeps bailing from the pocket and having terrible pocket presence, which is just like he's regressing. And I don't think it's the kind of thing where like, oh, he's objectively getting worse because like, I don't like, what has he changed on the field? There hasn't really been anything that's changed. And so he's just losing more and more trust and getting more and more uncomfortable. And so, yeah, as EP is commenting, he's nervous in the pocket because he knows he has no offensive line. That certainly hasn't helped either. I know the Jags offensive line was better this game against Houston, but there were still a couple of plays, especially when Houston was sending heavy blitzes, where Trevor kind of just knew that his internal clock was going to have to be super quick. And he was just basically going from one read to scramble, almost like you're seeing Jaden Daniels do right now as a rookie quarterback for the Commanders and Cliff Kingsbury's offense. But they really need to, like, I've been advocating for the Jaguars to let Trevor cook a little bit more in terms of not necessarily dropping back to pass more, but dropping back to pass with more passing options and more spread out, just route concepts rather than just having like one specific just like destination in mind for him pre-snap regardless of the play and just trying to scheme up a specific look. Like just open up the field for him, run curl flats, run all the basic stuff and just let him go to work. But at this point, I kind of don't really blame the Jaguars offense for not doing that because Trevor does just look so uncomfortable. And so I think if you let him start making his own decisions rather than like scheming up a target for Parker Washington, like we saw early in the second half, that's just not open. And then he kind of doesn't have anywhere else to go, then that would help. But yeah, like Trevor just at the end of the day, as I was saying earlier with half, like the excuses are over. He needs to find a way. If the offense isn't doing it for him to get him in a rhythm, he needs to find a way for himself to get in a rhythm. He needs to put something else in his Gatorade. He needs to find someone else to give him a warm-up speech. He needs to do something different personally because the stuff around him isn't going to change. This is an 0-4 team that is not going to make the playoffs, and it's going to have changes around him soon. But he's just signed a 5-year contract extension that makes him in town for 6 years because it's added on to his rookie deal. So he needs to figure out something personally to just get himself into that rhythm and get himself comfortable in the pocket and comfortable being the quarterback that everyone thought he could be when he was the first overall pick. Joel agrees with me. Yes, I've been saying since his rookie year, that his pocket presence was great. Carl says, Trevor's awesome. It's the coaching and the system that's failing him. Lonely Jags fan added, our coaching staff is absolutely atrocious. One thing that I thought was interesting from that report that Hacker was talking about earlier, it was a CBS Sports report or article by Jonathan Jones. Let me see if I can find it on my timeline. But here's, this is from the Jonathan Jones article. Quote, per sources familiar with the situation, at least 2 former NFL offensive coordinators expressed interest in joining the Jaguars' staff, but nothing came together. it seems as if the Jaguars, or at least head coach Doug Peterson and specifically offensive coordinator Press Taylor, do not believe they need the help. If they wanted to add coaches to the brain trust, they would have. They had the chance to do so, end quote. And so I've talked about this, I think, both for 1010 and then when I talked about it with John Shipley, and he's the one who tweeted that quote. Like one of the concerns about Jacksonville's offense coming into this season is just like the lack of brain trust. And not that Doug Peterson and Press Taylor don't have a lot of brain trust, but like they just can't be the offense completely by themselves. I think it was last offseason that Jim Bob Cooter left and went to either the Colts or the Titans, but they've just been like losing brain power out of like the offensive coaching staff for the past offseason or two the Jaguars have, and they haven't replaced them with anyone. That's the biggest problem. Like it's one thing if your coaches are getting poached, like if anything, that's a good sign that your offense is good and just wanted by other teams and other coaching staffs. But on the other hand, like it's crazy to not replace them. Like just inexcusable. I feel like the offense has just gotten stale. And even if it's a sound offense and is supposed to have answers for every play and every coverage, like they've kind of just been running the same stuff since Philadelphia. Like they do a couple like new tweaks. Like today and last week against the Bills, Christian Kirk ran basically a fake slot fade from the slot, but then he turned it and cut to the sideline. So it was basically an out route from the slot that was supposed to look like a slot fade at first. And so that's like a cool little tweak that the coaching staff has added, but like they need more than just cool little tweaks in like a Brian Thomas reverse and Trevor Lawrence doing a quarterback draw on 4th and goal line. Like they need like new good ideas, and not just for little tweaks to certain plays, but for the whole offense in general. Like the offense needs to adapt more than it has, rather than just trying to throw a bunch of different stuff at the wall and nothing sticking. And so, yeah, in terms of the coaching staff, to wrap up that point, it's really hurting them. I think that obviously it's not great for Doug Peterson and Press Taylor to be ahead of the show as we're seeing right now, but it's also hurting that they don't really have anyone else to go to. Not that they have no one else, but they don't have a lot of other people to go to in the building to kind of just get back on track and build better game plans going forward on offense. Let's see what other comments we have. Oh, it looks like Tom McManus is about to join us. So we'll wait for his thing to load and then get his thoughts. I always love having Tom on right after a game. Here he is. We'll get back to more questions in a minute. Or if anyone has questions for Tommy, feel free to ask. Tommy,
hey,
you look,
Gus, how
look
are
like
you?
you're enjoying something at least, enjoying the weather.
Well, I tell you what, we watched the game inside, and then once the game was over, we're outside at a friend's house celebrating my wife's birthday. You know, I asked the Jags for a win today because she said to me earlier today, she's like, man, I hope the Jags don't lose on my birthday. But unfortunately, that is the case. I tell you what, another game, Gus, they could have won. That's what's so aggravating. You know, look, the Bills, okay, Bills kicked our butt. There's no doubt about that. I think there were some things we could have done that maybe change that outcome. I'm on the intercoastal down here, so these boats, you know, it's a beautiful Sunday afternoon. That's why we live in Jacksonville, right? I mean, such a great place. But,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
look, we had chances to win this game. You know, you could. I'm going to watch the tape tomorrow morning like I always do and really try to figure this out. But, man, just another aggravating loss by our hometown team. 0-4. Only one team in the history of the NFL has made the playoffs after starting 0-4, and that's the 92 Chargers, man. And it's going to be tough. Going to be tough. Really tough loss today.
Yeah, my question for you, Tommy, is did you learn anything new about the team? Because it almost feels tough to come up with new takeaways, considering even though they did kind of lose in a different way, they just keep losing, and it feels like, I don't know, the team is continuing to be lifeless, and it's kind of everyone's looking around and asking themselves, what next?
Well, you know, you got to make some plays. You know, you miss some throws, you miss some tackles. I will tell you a positive. Ventrell Miller's never leaving the field for me. I think this kid is everything we need out there. I don't know. That doesn't mean he's replacing a Lewican. I'd find maybe a different spot. But, man, he really grew up today, I thought. He was all over the field making plays on D, on special teams. You know, look, It's just look, they made plays, we made plays, we missed some things. We got the ball 4 minutes to go. You don't run the clock more than a minute. You give them 3 minutes with the ball. It's a recipe for disaster. I don't like not going for the points. I know what Doug's gonna say. Probably has already said it. Hey, our defense was playing well. We thought we'd hold them, we'd go for it, but man, you're on the road. Take the points, momentum. Those things matter, and I hated I liked the call, the draw.
Oh
But
yeah.
Trevor did a terrible job trying to sell it. He just
Mm.
he didn't even make a cut. Like they looked like there could have been an opening to the left. I know it happens fast, so easier said than done. But I don't know, man. That just was bad execution, and quite frankly, I would have taken the points and see what happens. But at the end of the day, our defense couldn't stop them and get off the field at that end. And credit Houston finding a way to win that ball game. Unbelievable.
For sure. Well, as you said, Ventrell Miller was definitely a bright spot. He was playing in his first career NFL start in place of Foye Oluokun, who's recently placed on short-term injured reserve with a foot injury. Let's get Mia O'Brien in here because she is standing by with us on the field. Mia, how's it going? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Give us the rundown.
All right, so we just wrapped up in the locker room. It's so interesting when this locker room seems upbeat after losses, when they seem absolutely demoralized. I really walked away from Wednesday's availability concerned about this team, the fight that it would have coming here to Houston. And I actually walked out of that locker room, and obviously this is a team that's 0-4. That's who they are, and they all admitted that. But I felt much more positive about where this team can go. And look, only one team in the history of the NFL has ever started 0-4 and made the postseason. And that was before, granted, a 17-game regular season. But I walked away from just speaking to Christian Kirk, to Travis Etienne, Brian Thomas Jr., Ventrell Miller just now. And it was actually pretty positive by far and large. It was, we're not where we want to be. There's still mistakes. It's not perfect. But there were enough things done that if you were to bring all those things together, oh, and by the way, as Daniel Thomas told me, simply get a takeaway or two, which the first takeaway of the season being on special teams, I don't think anybody saw that coming. If you can just bring that all together, this is a very talented team. And the fact that it wasn't a, brush it off your shoulder, like whatever, I'm making money, I don't care. It wasn't that. I mean, Travis Etienne, I can't wait to share the soundbite with you guys on the 1010XL social and digital channels. He was so effusive in his praise for the young players like Ventrell Miller, like Brian Thomas Jr., like Tank Bigsby, who, when Travis said to us this week, we need to get back to the reason we play football. Take the money out of it. Take playing in the NFL out of it. Why do you play football? And he said that those three young guys are prime examples of why you play that sport of football. And Tommy, obviously, I know that really speaks to your soul as a former football player. So it was really encouraging to hear that from Travis and company.
Well, here's the thing. I haven't played in a very long time, but you can't replace that glory. You can't replace the glory of winning an NFL game, winning in the playoffs. I've never been to a Super Bowl, so I can't speak on that, but you just can't replace it. So it is tough, man. You want those games back. You could probably sit there and you say for each of those losses, man, a few plays here, a few plays there, maybe a different outcome. I thought the fight was there. I have no problem with the fight. I thought they came out. I thought they played hard. I thought they played hard to the end. We couldn't get off the field at the end, and that'll always hurt you. We couldn't run the ball at the end, which definitely hurts you. You're 4 minutes to go. You got the lead, man. You got to run that clock somehow. You got to get first downs and run that clock, and that just didn't happen enough. So, look, I mean, they're 0-4. We know the stats. You said it, the history. You got to come back. You know what? Maybe they go to London, like last year and turn things around. Listen, Mia, I agree with you. And I thought this last year, I think it even more this year. They're plenty talented enough. They have plenty of talent. They need to put it all together, quit making mistakes, being more consistent with making plays. And I think this team's got a chance. But the reality is they're 0-4. And it's tough, man. That's a tough. We were 4-12 our very first year, and I don't know how we started, but I got to imagine it was something like 0-4. And it's not fun, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear that spirits are relatively high, at least higher than you might expect in the Jaguars locker room. And so, Tommy, we'll let you go. I feel bad that you're missing out on your wife's birthday, but thank you for
It's all
joining
good.
us.
It's all good. We've had a great day so far. We love watching our Jaguars. My wife, she's a Pro Bowl cheerleader, so we're heavily invested of the Jaguar roar. So we're heavily invested as a family. My kids are into it. We love watching it, and it's very emotional for us. But hey, look, man, they fought hard. They gave it their best, and sometimes things just don't end up the way you want them to. And now you got to regroup and come back stronger than ever. And I'll just tell you this, I'll guarantee you this. The party will continue after I'm done with this little thing with you guys. So we're going to continue to party and have a good time.
That's
Happy
good.
birthday to
Yeah,
my wife. Thanks to everybody. Appreciate you guys.
for sure. Happy birthday to your wife, Tommy. You can
All
catch him
right.
on the Tommy McManus podcast on 1010XL channels. Thanks, Tommy. We'll see you next Sunday.
Hey, thanks, guys. Mia, safe travels home, babe. We'll see you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
All right, Mia. I wanted to ask you: is there any kind of what's the word, just small win that can be gained from today? Even though obviously they added another L to the column and they're now 0-4. It's looking pretty bleak season wide. But do you think there was anything that they can take away positively after what you said about the locker room post game?
Yeah, no, that's the thing, Gus, is I honestly walked away and I felt a lot more positive than I anticipated feeling. Obviously, they're not happy with the result. I would hope that's the case. I would hope it's that they're not just brushing this aside and saying, whatever, we'll be back to it on Monday. But both Christian Kirk and Daniel Thomas said to me that you can't think about we're 0-4. You have to recognize the urgency. But the more and more that you actually allow yourself to be consumed by that, you're ignoring your responsibilities of, hey, it's a new week. I got to go to work. I got to try to be better than we were last week. We have to identify where we were good and how we can build upon that. So I think there are definitely things you can build on. We said it coming into this game. I hammered the point home on the Terminex kickoff show this morning. The run game is good. They are actually running the ball comparatively to the past 2 years. And you saw it today where they really leaned into it. It's unfortunate that you didn't see more of it in the fourth quarter of this game because in the first 3 quarters, it looks like this team could run on whoever they really chose to. And the idea of not only Travis Etienne being an explosive threat as the sun starts peeking its way through here at NRG Stadium, so I'll turn this way. Love when that happens. But this idea of not only Travis Etienne being this explosive playmaker, but also Tank Bigsby being equally as capable of going 58 yards downfield. And I know we all were hoping he was sneaking to the end zone there. Woulda, shoulda, coulda is the name of the game for this team. I don't want to say, well, they'll be better for it having gone through this start. But look, DT said to me, he started his career 1-20 here, and he's not who he is today. He's not recovering that fumble. He's not the sole spiritual leader of that locker room if he doesn't go through that. And so we never really know what the plan is, but I would say spirits higher than I thought they would be, and not just in a dismissive type of way, which was encouraging.
What about, while we're talking about ETN, how is his shoulder doing? Because from the podcast, it sounded like
he told us it was just a football play. We didn't get the specifics of which play, but I'm assuming it was on pass blocking on that first play of the ball game. But he stressed that it was just simply a football play and there was nothing anyone could have done about it. So that's, oh wow, the sun's really peeking through. Okay, Houston, I see you. So he said it was just a football play and there was really nothing else to it. And he said, that's what I signed up to do. But really didn't feel the effects of it after that.
Okay. I want to ask you about Trevor Lawrence just from your view, because obviously on the broadcast, you can't really see the safeties and how the play fully develops in terms of at least passing plays. And so everyone saw Trevor Lawrence miss Brian Thomas deep on that should be touchdown. But what did you think of Trevor's performance otherwise from the game?
Up and down. Some of this loss has to be shouldered by him, and I have no doubt that he will shoulder much of it. He knows he missed and left some plays on the field, but I also think that other throw to Brian Thomas Jr., there's probably 5 or 6 people on planet Earth that can make that throw. And that's the reason that you can't give up on a talent like Trevor Lawrence. You have to remember he turns 25 years old next week. I understand everyone wants the next Mahomes. Everyone wants the next Josh Allen, where it's just right out of the box. Here you are. The system is ready for you. Here we go. Even Josh Allen, it took a couple of years, but the plan and the process was in place. I still have questions about the plan and the process, even after today's game. I felt a little bit more encouraged after today's performance with offensively the structure and how it fits around Trevor Lawrence. I think if anything, if he looks a little gun shy, it's probably because of what happened the last time this team was on a football field on Monday night, and just the absolute abomination that it proved to be. And this was anything but an abomination. I know it's a loss. I know it stings. And I think that's maybe why he looked a little gun shy at times. But I thought, for all intents and purposes, yes, it's probably a C game from Trevor, and you need more from a $275 million quarterback, no question. But he still does things that not no one else, but a handful of human beings on earth can do. You tweeted it, Gus. You just got to find a way to get him cooking early and be consistent. I don't know if this offensive staff right now is that answer. They could be. They could prove us wrong in the month of October, for all we know, once the calendar flips on Tuesday. But that's my biggest concern right now, is the development and the confidence of Trevor Lawrence. I don't know what happens behind the scenes. He just walked past me in the locker room, which is kind of wacky, because as I walked out on the field, I was like, wow, last time we were here, I was recording quick hits, and Trevor came up behind me and stuck his head in the video, and the Jags were 8-3 and things were great. And I think they do a good job of recognizing that when things are going good, it's not as good as it seems. When things are going bad, it's not as bad as it seems. And I think that's in large part because of what they've experienced over the last 9 games that this team has played together.
Well, for Trevor, I feel like in the Jags, it actually feels like a get right game for them, considering they've got the whole Ring of Honor ceremony with Tom Coughlin, but it'll be their second game season, and against the Colts team that lost their starting quarterback in Anthony Richardson. And so Hacker and I agreed that we would honestly rather face Richardson than a veteran, steady quarterback presence in Joe Flacco. But at the same time, I think the Colts offense under defensive coordinator Gus Bradley is just very predictable as he was making here in Jacksonville. And so I think the Jaguars have kind of had the Colts' hand It'll be interesting to see whether Trevor and the offense can get things going next week. And so what's your confidence level as we approach that second game?
Yeah, I'm honestly more confident in next week now after a loss than I would have been if they'd won. I actually looked over at Mike DiRocco at one point today, and I said, if they win this game, they're somehow going to find a way to lose next week because of just the law of averages. So I feel much more confident. Travis Etienne just told us, we know what we got to do. We just got to go do it. We largely did it today, coming off of the abomination that was Monday. And so now we take the next step. And then he finished off by saying, next time you guys talk to me post-game and we have our swagged out throwback jerseys on, we're going to be having a way different conversation than we are right now. And I thought that was quite the mic drop. And again, showed the confidence that we know Travis has. But I think the confidence that locker room still does have. Again, I was questioning it as recently as Wednesday. I walked out of that locker room and I was like, wow, I don't really know. But after the fight we saw today, I know it's been a loss. I'm more confident in this team's odds of bouncing back in some form or fashion. And look, ultimately, if playoffs are the goal, yeah, you are very much looking at being a 1 in a million right now. But I feel more confident in the potential of that occurring after the conversations I just had.
All right, man, my last question for you before we get you out of here is just, do you have any kind of update on Josh Hines-Allen? Steven on Twitter/X is asking. We know he was ruled out with a concussion, but did you get any further word on that?
Yes, he is in the concussion protocol, so we were unable to speak with Josh just now. I did see him. He was speaking actually with owner Shad Khan right outside the locker room. Josh actually greeted every member of the Jaguars as they came in, of the Jaguars team, as they came into the locker room. And so, you know, a captain through and through and a leader. But yes, unfortunately, he is in the concussion protocol, so we didn't get a chance to speak with him post-game.
Gotcha. All right, yeah. Well, you got plenty to do. Get back safe. Thanks for joining, and we will talk to you on the Thursday edition of Duval Rundown.
You know it. Thank you. Got to go make my flight after I film some quick hits.
All right, take care.
Bye, guys.
Okie dokie. What else are y'all talking about in the comments? Let's see. Let's do a little chat therapy before we get out of here. Patman said, #injury bug got us. Not really. Did anyone even get hurt today besides Josh Hines-Allen? I mean, Travis Etienne we just talked about, he got a little bit dinged up. Daniel Thomas played a decent amount of defensive snaps, so I don't know if that was because of an injury or because of a benching or what happened there. But, yeah, so the injury bug honestly hasn't even been that bad for the Jaguars. It's just that they've been unfortunate in that the injury bug did occur to their two arguably best defensive players, or probably their two best defensive players after Hines Allen, and Foye Oluokun and Tyson Campbell. And so hats off to Ryan Nielsen, honestly. That was the one other point I wanted to make sure I made before ending the show, is that Ryan Nielsen's defense, I was pretty underwhelmed by last week, just because I thought that without Tyson Campbell and going against the MVP frontrunner and Josh Allen, the Jags just gave Allen and the Bills offense way too many easy answers, especially on early downs and against man coverage. And they were just running too much man. Even if the Bills don't have Stephon Diggs anymore, or like a number one alpha, they still have enough guys and certainly a good enough offensive system and offensive play calling, then they can get guys open against main coverage, especially, again, without Tyson out there. And so we saw as that game, the Jags definitely made an in-game adjustment and switched to more zone coverages and did a few different things, but it was kind of too little too late. But in this game, Jason McCourty actually mentioned on the broadcast how the Jags started out running a lot more zone coverages than they had for the rest of the season so far. And so I thought that Nielsen did an amazing job. Just the fact that it was an away game against a Texans team that, even though they had some injuries themselves to Tank Dell and Joe Mixon, and Laramie Tunsil was a little bit banged up during the game, that's still a very, very good offense and a very, very good quarterback playing at home in what was potentially going to be was still a get-right game for them, coming off a big loss to the Vikings in Week 3. But the fact that Nielsen held them to 24 points, and it was without Oluokun and Campbell for the entire game. I'm pretty impressed by Ryan Nielsen and Jacksonville's defense. And they didn't even get a defensive turnover. I know that they did finally get their first turnover of the season, but it was on special teams via Daniel Thomas. And so, yeah, no Oluokun, no Campbell, no defensive turnovers. Not really any big problems for Ryan Nielsen. But as with the rest of the season so far, Jacksonville just didn't score enough points on offense to end up winning the game. What else do you want to talk about? I just saw my name somewhere, but then I lost it. Oh, Gus, can you block the idiots spamming the chat talking about wrestling? I did see that one guy. He just sent 3 in a row. It was only 3 in a row. If it gets really annoying, I'll try to see what I can do in terms of blocking. But, yeah, keep me updated on that. I think so far the chat's been all right. Someone commented on YouTube, coaches need to be fired immediately along with Trent. I think, like I said earlier, it's a matter of when, not if, for Trent Peterson being gone, it feels like. But the real question, I think, is not like Peterson and Prex Taylor being fired. It's if Trent Baalke ends up getting fired after the season or even before the season ends, because he is, like Hacker was kind of talking about it earlier, where this is like kind of save your own job mode right now for everyone in Jacksonville. And that's like the one thing Trent is really good at. And part of the reason that he outlasted Jim Harbaugh in San Francisco when they were both with the Niners is that he's just able to get into the right people's ears and make himself seem kind of better or more important or whatever you want to say than he probably is in actuality. And so, yeah, I think honestly, I think I said at some point last week that I'm expecting them to clean house. I don't know if I officially said it or not, but I'm going to go on record right now and say I don't think Trent Baalke is going to be fired, which is going to make a lot of people upset, and rightfully so. But I just think that he's got a crazy, crazy, crazy long leash with Shad Khan, and certainly longer than Doug Peterson has. Steven asked, how much is Engram being out hurting this offense? I think you mostly saw it like in Cleveland and then a little bit last week. As more time has gone on when Engram has been out, it's been hurting them less and less, and mostly because they've been able to kind of like adapt and do different things and adjust over time. And Brenton Strange has gotten a little bit better over time. He had a really nice catch today on like a 7-yard route, but it was still a nice grab kind of outside of his frame. So he's continuing to play solid in place of Engram. But yeah, I think on early downs, like early down passes is probably where they miss Engram the most, because I feel like they're doing a pretty solid job, especially with Thomas Jr. and Kirk, of converting on third downs, especially on like 3rd and 4s and 3rd and 5s. But it would be really nice to have Engram to be able to just like take a tight end screen when he's lined up out wide for 4 yards to just get the ball rolling. or just like to be able to be used on a drag route on 2nd and 9 and just pick up some chunky yards is what he's good for. And so I do think that Ingram being out is hurting this offense, but I don't think it's like a crazy big impact, especially in this game today. Again, it was a much bigger deal, obviously, in week 2 when he was ruled out pregame when he tweaked his hamstring. And so, like, I think that Oluokun and Tyson, their injuries are way more impactful to the defense than Ingram's is to the offense, if that answers the question. But I also don't want to diminish Ingram's value. Like, they would certainly be much, much better with him out there. And so they're definitely excited to get him back soon. I think Doug said either like 2 days ago that they're optimistic that Ingram will return in week 6 against the Colts. What else do we got? People are getting called fools, idiots in the comments. Be nice, guys. I know that this team is hard to watch, but be like, take a page out of Tommy Mack's book and just go enjoy the outdoors. That's what I'm gonna do in about 5 minutes, probably here. You're welcome, Steven, for answering your question. Please keep them coming. I'm happy to just read all your guys' venting, but I'm also here to just be a soundboard kind of too. Barry asked, why can't Trevor make the long balls down the field? I said it multiple times so far, but I think it's just like comfort / rhythm / confidence thing. Like I said, that Trevor right now reminds me of a 3-point shooter who's just on a bad streak right now, or in a slump right now. Trevor is in a slump right now is the best way to describe what's happening right now, because that throw that he's made, or that he missed to Brian Thomas Jr., that should have been a touchdown in the first half. He was probably making that throw when he was like in 8th grade or something like that. He can make that throw, but he's just not in the right rhythm, or just not having the right trust level or confidence level. I don't know. There's just something off about it. And it's obviously like about him, but it's not really about his abilities. It's more about like his mentals, I guess. Not that I think his mentals are poor. I think his mentals are actually impressive for getting through the Urban Meyer year and really like leading the team to the playoffs in 2022. And then like toughing out a bunch of injuries last year. So in each year, like Trevor has honestly shown a lot of mental toughness. And I've always thought that he was one of the most competitive players on the field. I haven't seen that anyone's doubting that, but I don't think anyone should doubt that Trevor wants to win and wants to win a Super Bowl and wants to be recognized as a future Hall of Famer and all of that stuff. But like something just needs to change. He needs to get Mojo back. I don't know where Mo went, but he's got to find Mo. Taylor said, BTJ needs to get the same volume of targets that Nico Collins gets. I think Nico Case is making a case this season for flat out the best wide receiver in the National Football League. I know that Malik Neighbors has been on a tear as a rookie, and that obviously you've still got Justin Jefferson, who's in the league. You've still got Jamar Chase, who had maybe the play of the day today against the Carolina Panthers, breaking like 5 tackles on his way to the end zone. But man, if this game didn't convince you that Nico Collins is a at least top 5 receiver, I don't know what will, because it felt like the only thing that was working for the Texans in the second half especially was like just a dig route to Nico Collins, and it feels like it's open every single time. It's just the chemistry that I think Nico and CJ have on those throws over the middle of the field is special, because they have the timeliness in the chemistry to be able to just like make it work. Just depending on what the coverage is. Like if they're playing against a covered 3 zone defense, then Stroud is going to want to throw the dig pretty much as soon as Nico is like making the cut towards the middle of the field. But if they're playing like a 2-high defense, then he might need to wait a little bit longer, especially if they're playing a man-to-man defense. Then he's going to wait until he actually sees Stroud separate, as opposed to just throwing as he's kind of breaking on the ball. And so just their chemistry and the timing that they have on a dig route alone, but just in general, is really impressive. And Stroud is awesome, but Nico Collins is also awesome. And so to answer Taylor's comment about BTJ, like I think it's encouraging that we have seen BTJ get more and more volume as the season has progressed. Like he was definitely saying it on film too, or his film was saying that he needed to get more volume and more targets. And so I think when we look back at the film from today, we'll probably say the same thing, even though he got like probably 6 or 7 targets, I think. But I think it's fair to say that he should be getting more targets and arguably that he should be leading the team in targets. But it's another thing to be saying that he should get the same volume as a top 5 receiver like Nico Collins, because Nico is that guy. What else do you guys have for me? Joe said T-Walk is a bigger bust than Trevor. I mean, neither are busts, but that's kind of a good question, honestly. Like, who's been the worst number 1 pick between Trevor Lawrence and Trayvon Walker? I mean, it's completely based on expectations because Trevor Lawrence was touted as the best college prospect since Andrew Luck or maybe even John Elway. And so he was expected to be the prince that was promised, the golden child, the football messiah, whatever you want to call him. So he had like almost LeBron James type expectations. And so compared to that, like he was always going to be not a bust, but like probably always going to underwhelm expectations when they were so high. And Trayvon, even though he was the number 1 overall pick, it's kind of the opposite because he was a sleeper number 1 overall pick in a draft class that, like, the reason that he was picked first overall is that it just wasn't a very top-heavy class, where there wasn't a lot of, like, just crazy first ballot future Hall of Famers, where it's not like you had, like, a Marvin Harrison and a Joe Alt coming out in 2021 when Trayvon was drafting. And so based on their expectations, I feel like Trevor's had a more disappointing career just because his expectations were so high. But just for a first overall pick, I think Trayvon has probably been a little bit more disappointing because he's even been like the number 2 option behind Hines Allen his whole career. And I know he got double-digit sacks last year, but he's been just kind of meh, I guess. And I know that Trevor has been pretty meh as a whole, but at least he's had some really good ups and downs. Like he has set like NFL passing records for being like the youngest passer to reach like 2,000 or 3,000 or 5,000 passing yards. I forget what it is, but he's still really young and he's had the flashes like the comeback against the Chargers. And so I think he's shown a little bit more as a first overall pick, but that was an interesting little conversation with myself, I guess. I don't know why people are still saying that Trevor should be traded. Like, it's not happening, guys. It's not going to happen. I'm sure there's a lot of organizations that'll be interested in it happening, but like the Jaguars aren't doubting their decision to give him that contract so much after just a month of football being played after the contract was signed that they're like going back on and they're like, yeah, we have to get rid of him at any cost necessary. It's like, no way. Trevor's the quarterback until the state of the future, if not for the next 2 decades. So just relax with the trading talk or even the benching talk. Though fortunately, I haven't seen too many Mac Jones comments. Big Bill said this host is a joke. Give me some feedback. Don't just be mean. Come on now. Someone said the Jags have way more problems than just Trevor. The other guys who got paid, Allen 150, 1 sack on the season, Tyson unavailable, etc. At Gus. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, Tyson, it's hard to kind of fault him because I know it's frustrating that he's not out there, but what are you going to do when it's a hamstring injury? And then Hines Allen, like I don't think he's like not shown up at all, but it's a little bit similar to Trevor where it's like, now that you got the new contract, like expectations are raised. Expectations are already high for him because he was the face of the defense, the leader of that unit. He just came off a season where he was like tied for second in sacks in the entire NFL. So the expectation now is that you're a dude and someone that has to like keep up defensive coordinators at night when they're game planning against you and keep up quarterbacks and just strike fear into everyone on the opposing offense. And Hines Allen, like I know there's been talk on the Twitter timeline stuff today about how he was asked to put on some weight assumedly this offseason, because he was going from more of like a 3-4 outside linebacker role to a 4-3 defensive end role. And so I don't know. Like, I know that with the box score stats certainly isn't there for Hines Allen, but I said after last week's disappointment against the Bills, like, it's only been 3 weeks with Ryan Nielsen. That was definitely a terrible game, but like, let's slow down a little bit. So I kind of feel like the same way with Hines Allen, especially if he put on some weight and is kind of getting used to playing a very slightly different position with his hand in the dirt. Like, let's give him a little bit of time, especially considering like Tyson and Aluakon are out. Like, it's hard to ask him and the defense to do a ton when that stuff is happening, when such good players are out. Reedy said tank for Travis Hunter. Yeah, I think that's the tank of the week right there. After he put it on the performance he did on Saturday against UCF and hit the Heisman pose, probably going to be, or like, he's definitely going to be the first quarterback off the board in the draft that's not a quarterback, right? Or maybe even including quarterbacks. I don't pay as much attention to college football, but he has looked good. James Davis said, do you think Doug and Press could get fired and Mike McCoy take over? Yeah, I still think nothing's going to happen until the team comes back to London. I'm sticking with that take. But as Hayes and I discussed on Tuesday, Mike McCoy, we both think makes a lot of sense to be the interim head coach if/when that happens, because Ryan Nielsen, like, is probably the assumption for the guy that would take over operations, but he's already got a lot on his plate, as it's his second year calling defensive plays in his first year in the organization. But Mike McCoy used to be a head coach back in San Diego days with Philip Rivers, and he's been in the organization for a few years. And so I think that's a logical choice for the future interim head coach. Kenneth asked, what does our future look like with Trevor at quarterback for the next decade? Will he ever get it right? Yeah, I think one positive almost from this conversation about like Trevor being the quarterback and you guys being stuck with him, so on so, and not, you guys shouldn't be like asking about trades and stuff like that. The thing is, like, he's got a long time to figure this out. Like, the Jaguars, based on his contracts, probably wouldn't even be able to get out of his contract if they wanted to for another 3-4 years at the minimum. And so he's going to have a lot of time with whoever the next coach is going to be. It's kind of like iron out his kinks, clean up the details, do whatever he needs to do to kind of like take that next step that we are all expecting. I've written so many stories for Big Cat Country being like, this is the year that Trevor Lawrence takes the next step. This is the year that Trevor Lawrence takes the next step, because he's like gotten to like that Derek Carr tier, I feel like, or it used to be the Andy Dalton line or whatever of good quarterback play, where you're either a better than or worse than Andy Dalton as just like a mediocre game manager, basically, who won't win you or lose you a game. And so myself and a lot of other people have been waiting for Trevor to take that next step to be the kind of guy that is winning games for the football team. And so I think in terms of the future with Trevor for the next decade, you just got to find a coach that's going to have a really good relationship with Trevor. Like, it's one thing to be really good at X's and O's and to have all of the new stuff that everyone's running this year and to be able to adapt your offense to new schemes and new changes, and just to have all of the answers on paper. But really, the Jags need to find a coach that will have a good relationship with all of the players, but especially the face of the franchise and Trevor Lawrence, and be able to just build his confidence. Because I kind of feel like part of the reason that Trevor doesn't have a lot of confidence right now is that he's probably not getting a lot of confidence or a lot of just positive reinforcement from Doug Peterson and Press Taylor. And I get that there's not a lot of positiveness to be reinforced so far this season, but I don't know, like, it just seems like even when you watch them on the sideline, they're just like upset and pissed at each other. And so you need to find a coach that, yes, has like all the good X's and O's up their sleeve, but also is able to build a relationship with Lawrence and being able to see that he's in this slump and know what to do or what to say to get him out of it. Lonely Jags fan asked, does anyone else think it looks like these guys don't practice hard and equals a lot of playing mistakes and execution errors? It's a little bit hard to say considering none of us are watching Jaguars practices. After training camp, press and media are only allowed to go out to practice for about 10 minutes during each session during warmups, and it's literally just to get a head count to see like basically who's injured and who's out there and red pennies and stuff like that. And so there's not really any takeaways that you can have from practice, but I think it's probably fair that like I feel like for the past year plus, like there's been talk of like, oh, are the Jags gonna like practice harder, or what are they gonna like do to like change up their practices so that they can come better prepared at games? And so I think it's fair to say or to question Doug Peterson's kind of coaching setup or practice setup and practice methods or whatever, and think that maybe they need to practice harder, maybe they need to practice different things, maybe they need different music. I don't know. But yeah, I think that's a fair comment. James Davis said the D-line is not getting pressure because there are a lot of plays where guys are open. The quarterback gets the ball out quick. Yep. D-line has not gotten a lot of pressure. I know that Roy Robertson Harris got a sack today. I don't know where he was aligned during that sack, but I know that he did play a lot of snaps at defensive end as opposed to defensive tackle. So it's weird that the Jags, like now, like Roy Robertson Harris and Eric Armstead are basically like the depth or the backup edge rushers. And so now it's like you're just relying on Devon Hamilton and maybe Mason Smith to be your pass rush in the middle. Like the whole reason that at least I was excited about Eric Armstead is that, like, yeah, there wasn't a lot of depth behind Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker, but Jacksonville hasn't gotten any juice from his pass rush in the interior since Calais Campbell left the team. And so I thought Eric Armstead was going to have a big domino effect by being able to be just a disruptor in the middle, and then it would like just make things easier everywhere else along the defensive line. But instead, like, they didn't put enough resources into the defensive end room, and now they're having to put resources from the defensive tackle room into the defensive end room, and now they just don't have a lot of resources at defensive tackle. And so, yeah, I think maybe we'll see the defensive tackle. Like, I think that's maybe the unit that has the most potential to kind of like keep growing throughout the season, just because Nielsen is just so vouched or applauded for the work that he does with defensive line fundamentals and technique and coaching and all of that. And so maybe the defensive line will improve over time, but so far just hasn't been enough getting out of that group yet. James Davis said, I think the defensive coordinator should be playing more zone with backup quarterbacks. Yeah, I mentioned that a little bit ago. It might have been before Tommy and Mia came on, but last week, Nielsen definitely played way too many coverage, especially against an elite quarterback and without Tyson Campbell. And so it was good to see him kind of correct it this week, playing more zone coverage. It'll be interesting to go back and look at the tape and see what specifically they did, if they did a lot of like inverse coverages, like invert Tampa 2, or like a lot of post-snap movement with the safeties, or what exactly they did to kind of confuse CJ Stroud and make him hold on to the ball. Or, I mean, maybe they were just playing really sound zone coverage and there just wasn't really a lot of answers for Stroud. So we'll have to see, but it was a good job on the surface for sure for Nielsen. Clay said Devin Lloyd might be out of a starting role with Ventrell Miller's amazing performance today. Yeah, that'll be interesting to see, only because Devin Lloyd was having a pretty solid season himself. Like, it wasn't anything crazy, but like, I don't know if Ventrell Miller playing well will be enough to make him a starter. I feel like it'll have to be that Ventrell Miller is playing well and Devin Lloyd isn't playing up to par. And I haven't seen that quite yet from Devin Lloyd. I know he's still a fairly inconsistent player, but he's still gotten much more consistent over the years. And so, yeah, I think it would need to take something like an injury like it did today for Ventrell to actually stick into the starting lineup. But it was certainly a good day by the former Gator. All right, well, that'll do it. Josh commented, dude, it seemed like Doug Peterson wanted to throw up during that presser. I'll have to go watch it. But yeah, I'm gonna go because it's been a whole 80 minutes now. But thank you guys. We've had somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 people in this stream since the final whistle. And even if it's going to be a long season, and today was a pretty long game to watch the Jaguars lose their 4th straight in Houston to a division opponent, we're still here. So tune in to Duval Rundown next on Tuesday. My guest is TBD. And the time is TBD because I know that I've been saying it's going to be 9:04 on the weekdays going forward. But last week we had to do it on noon on Tuesday because we had Monday Night Football the night before. And so we'll see what happens. But yeah, just catch us next time on Tuesday. Thanks again for joining. Fun hanging out with you guys. Adios.